Hello, family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name is Betty Guadagno, and today I am joined by Reverend Rodney Gittens of the One Love Center for Spiritual Living. And Rodney and I are part of one spiritual community together, and we got to talking, and our conversation was just so expansive, and there was so many amazing spiritual stories within, a 30-minute conversation that I thought this would be a great opportunity to have him on the podcast. We tried to record this once before and we had some technical difficulties. I think maybe our frequency is so high that we break the internet together. I'm not sure, but I'm really grateful for your willingness to come back and to serve the community here at IANDS. And so I'm going to toss it right over to you to share about yourself. Thanks again.
Well, thank you, Betty. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you all for receiving me and receiving us and this information. I am a ordained minister with Centers for Spiritual Living, which is the overall organization for which One Love Center for Spiritual Living is a part. We are a New Thought community, and quite simply, New Thought is not associated with any other religious organization or denomination. New Thought are several different organizations. However, we share something very basic in common, which is focusing on spiritual principles and how they work in our lives and how to use them to our advantage, as instead of using them for our disadvantage, which happens a lot because New Thought, very simply, I like to say that New Thought is quite different than Old Thought. And some of it relates to the Christian religion, the Christian Bible. You have the Old Testament and the New Testament. And the Old Testament, a lot of it is based on what you should not do, and thou shalt not, and a whole lot of nots. And you get kind of, I mean, I don't want to be disparaging to any religion. I'm just saying that there's now a New Testament, which is more focused on what you can do to live a healthy, prosperous life, and mostly focusing on love. And so New Thought teachings are basically about the spiritual principles that are common to all religions, well, more the major religions and most religion, and to people who don't even practice religion, but practice a spiritual way of being, focusing on nature, focusing on the benefits of living a clean and wholesome life with positive thoughts, bringing forth positive experiences. And so that's what I'm into. That's what I'm hooked up with. And that's how I get to help people experience that for themselves. And so, the conversations that we had, Betty, were just so, and you said 30 minutes, it seemed like hours. We just had so much to share in that short amount of time. It was just really awesome. And it was all spiritually based. And we belong, we're I can say that we are members of an organization that believes that spiritual principles are never in conflict. And that is so meaningful to me because whatever our experiences are in life, we can always connect on the spiritual foundation that is inherent in all of these experiences. And so when we started talking about near-death experiences and I started bringing up memories for me, not just the physical memories, but the emotional memories, and then the memories of of how those experiences can support me in my life. Even though at the time, especially the childhood experiences, I didn't go journal. Oh, this is the experience I had. This is my real experience. But it was kind of recorded in my psyche, and if nothing else, it reminded me of how we get to overcome our experiences and further us along on our path, even if we don't use those words or have that kind of thought. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and continue to live in Brooklyn, New York now. And I love it. It's full of rich experiences. Some were very positive, and many that were, I can easily say, death defying, which is, well, I'm here. I think, let me just check. Uh, could still be a dream, coma dream or something. I don't know. And so some of the experiences that I had, most of which I thought were uh, revealing, were situations I put myself through, or that I found myself in. And it's just really interesting. And we started talking about near death experiences, and I actually, from the first conversation we had, another one had come up that I completely had forgot about. And I was, if I may, uh, it was right in front of the building complex that I was living in, downtown Brooklyn, and we were playing hide and seek. And it was time, I was one of the kids that was going to hide. And so I ran, and we were all looking around for a place to hide. And I saw these bushes. I thought, well, I'll hide behind the bushes. And so I think I was probably about, ooh, I'd say maybe 6 or 7, probably 6. And I jumped over the hedges, and I landed on a stump of one of the hedges. And I didn't see it because it was, a stump close to the ground, and it hit me in the chest. It put a little impression in my chest, and it knocked me out. I mean, I was out. And I remember having dreams, and I don't remember what they were about. It was such a long time ago. But I do remember that I was quite comfortable in those dreams. And then when I woke up, I remember before I woke up, I realized that something wasn't right, and I had to come back. I know I had an out of body experience, but when I woke up, it was dark. I obviously found a good hiding place because nobody found me. So, but I had this indentation in my chest. It was a little bit of blood, and I mean, it really was uh, traumatic. After I woke up, I'm like, oh my god, Actually, I remember saying, "Wow, I'm alive," because I realized that at some point I thought I wasn't, and that was the very first near death experience, what I understood death to be, um, in my life. And I remember that I certainly had to have had an out of body experience, because I do remember coming back, and then right before waking up, and and uh, and that was really powerful for me. I was scared because I didn't know what to tell my parents. I'm like, oh, where have you been? I'm like, I I I was always scared to tell them stuff. I might get a whipping or whatever. Late came in the dark, all that stuff kind of took over the experience that I had, and so I always remember it, but I don't always remember. I used to remember the dreams, but now I just remember that experience. And so that came up for me. I'm like, wow, I live in life on the edge, so throughout my life, I've had experiences that some might call near death. I've been in car crashes. I've uh, experienced um, I would guess I could say alcohol poisoning, just things where I was no longer in control of my own body, or my own, of my own life. And I don't know, did you want me to mention any of those experiences?
Well, thank you for sharing. And I'm really grateful for that. I would love, and only because we already talked about this stuff, I would love if you would talk about the bicycle and the truck incident. I think that it's like a totally fascinating story. And then maybe we'll go into some questions from there.
Okay, great. So also as a child, I was a young teenager. Um, I would say I was probably about 12. Let's see. So fourth grade, fifth grade. Yeah, I think I was about 12. And I was riding home from a friend's house on a bike that had no brakes. The 10-speed bike had no brakes. And I'm zipping along. I'm a block away from home. And I'm driving under the Manhattan Bridge. So that area is now called Dumbo, the area under the Manhattan Bridge. And there was a huge truck uh, that was making a left turn, and I wanted to go straight. However, the truck was taking up all of the space for me to get by, and I didn't have brakes, and there's a really high curb on my right, and I couldn't get up on the curb to get around the truck. And I had one of those gates, lift gates, and the gate was down, and it just took up all the space for me to pass by. And I'm going at this high rate of speed. I'm using my foot to try to stop the bike on the back wheel, and that's not happening. And in the split second, I just realized that I'm going to get decapitated. I mean, it's just going to take my head off. And it's a big bike, a 10-speed bike, and I can't get underneath it. And just as I'm ready to hit this truck, the next thing I know, I'm on the other side of the truck. And I have no idea how that happened. And I looked behind me, and the truck was still making a slow turn. And I thought, that's it. I'm dead, and I'm just watching. I'm looking for my body. Like, hey, what happened? And I was so shook up by it that I fell. Way after, down the block, I fall off the bike, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm alive. How is this even possible? And I mean, over all these years, I just cannot imagine any way that I made it through that without some kind of bodily injury. That I didn't, my head didn't get chopped off by the gate that was just hanging down, and or crash into it, or anything. And that was my first real kind of revelation about there's just more to life than this physical experience. And it took that to kind of open me up to the possibility. And I got to admit, there are days where I'm like, am I really alive? Have I been living all these years in a coma, and think that I've lived, these, 50 or whatever years, you know, all in this dream in a coma from that, what I thought I got away from. So
Yeah, I actually wrote that down when you had mentioned it before. I wrote down like laughing about coma dream because I've had the exact same thoughts. And even sometimes when I hear beeping, I'm like, oh, I must be hearing the beeping of the heart monitor in my coma room, and that's why I hear it here. So I totally have had the same thoughts. And I think that the stories that you just talked about, like, first of all, having these experiences in childhood, it really kind of sets the stage for that awareness very young that you can carry with you throughout your life, whether you do or whether you don't, that there is definitely something that we are unaware of the true nature of reality here.
mm.
And I heard you say when you were talking, you said what I understood death to be when you were talking about falling on the stump. And so I'm wondering if maybe you can share a little bit about what do you think death is now?
Well, thank you for asking that. And what I think death is now, it's quite different than I did, as a child or a young adult or an adult. And some of it is coming into the teaching of new thought. Um, However, I began to start seeing the similarities of how different religions treat what we call death. I used to think death was the end of everything, darkness, that's it, there's nothing. Now I see what we call death as a transition. Um, that, and I started realizing, well, wait a minute, we have phrases for this. We call it giving up the ghost, you leaving the shell, things of that nature. Like, well, wait a minute, what is it that leaves what is the ghost? What is it that leaves the shell? What is it that we're transitioning from and transitioning to? And so I realized first and foremost that we experience what we call death all the time, every day, every second. Our cells in our bodies are, you know, are dying, so to speak. They've outlived their usefulness, and they fall off or they're carried out of our body one way or the other. I mean, our skin cells uh, have life, and then they no longer have what we call life, and they go off into some other existence, as dust. Really, dead skin cells become dust. I'm like, who knew? And so when it comes to our complete organism, this body, when it has outlived its usefulness, and I'm really positive, 100% sure, it doesn't matter how we go, it's just time to go, which is a whole nother story. It's just that nothing ever truly dies. Everything goes through a transition. It changes form. The body, I mean, when they read it at funerals, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, we return to the earth. However we want to look at it, that's not an ending. And as you mentioned before, the frequencies that we have, the energies that we are made of, don't just disappear either. Energy is not destroyed. It just transmutes or transforms or transitions into another form at some point, or maybe not. Maybe it just hangs out as loose energy. Just that's it. Or maybe at some point it is attracted to either inhabit another body or some other form of life that we may not even recognize it on this planet or some other planet. Who knows? However, I really feel that what we call life is never ending. It just changes form, and so death is not a complete ending. It's just part of the process of life.
Yeah, and I love the idea of just, asking these quantum questions all the time. Like, well, maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that, maybe it could be all the things, like, and for me, I love being able to exercise that muscle inside my mind of going into like deep metaphysical, philosophical thought and saying like, yeah, what is this? Or how do I create the life that I want to? So you and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago for your ministry about like living a purpose-filled life. And so I want to see if maybe you'll share a little bit about how you came into this line of service that you're in now.
Well, thank you. And I revisit that often at times. Like, how did I get here? Or checking in. Okay, is this still for me to do? Is this why I'm here? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And uh, growing up was a life of service with my family in our neighborhood church, and we were just used to it. I mean, that's just part of my particular makeup and my family. We all that's pretty much how we operated, and when I was on that mission to find myself, to do my own thing, I started to realize that, I mean, long afterwards, that I was just kind of like a helper. I just wanted to help people realize a better life for themselves, even if, of course, I couldn't put it in those words. How can I help? Uh, was I think the underlying theme. And so a purpose-filled life is once we get to realize why we are here, then we get to fulfill that. However, we can't fulfill it if, first of all, we don't make that discovery. Most of the time, we don't make that discovery when we are mired in a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, I know every now and then I get to I take my own inventory every day. However, I like to make a practice of doing a more formal taking of my own inventory of who I am and things I don't like about what I think, say, or do, and things that I do like. And then the checks and balances, and what do I want to get rid of, what do I want to release, what do I want to keep, what I want to accentuate, what do I want to improve. And so I'd say growing up, I went through a lot of trials and tribulations of being a people pleaser, that helping gene just going too far, and not focusing on how I can be the best me I can be to help others be the best they can be. Most of the time, it was in any way, shape, or form that I can be there for somebody, whether it was positive or negative. Let me be there and do that. And that was all ego driven. And that was like, look at me, I'm helping, and therefore you're going to like me, and all that other stuff got in the way. And anything that I could add on to myself, to not have me look at myself, but to have other people look and say, oh yeah, I like that person. That that showed up a lot for me. It showed up where I didn't get to see who I really am in the midst of all that, trying to be what I thought other people wanted me to be and to do in order to have some kind of a relationship and feel worthy and needed and important and all these other, uh, selfish motives, to feed the ego, to feed the wounded child, that didn't feel loved, that didn't feel appreciated, that didn't feel uh, wanted. Now, all of those were only the figments of my imagination, and some of them had real roots. It's just that I found it very easy to nurture those lies and for them to take root on their own without it coming from any place else but my own thoughts, my own fears, my own beliefs. And they were negative, and didn't believe a whole lot in myself about who I am. And so I'm grateful for a lot of the lessons that I learned from seeking all this stuff outside of myself, which eventually had me take a look at myself, especially when I put myself through some of those death-defying experiences. Um, I mean, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, having a gun to my head, and thinking, well, I didn't even have enough time for my life to flash before my eyes. It was like, oh well, and nothing happened, and uh, thinking I was just lucky, um, and not giving thanks, not being grateful in that moment. However, it took a number. There's a saying that says, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then you'll do something about it. And that's what it took for me. It took me for being completely unmanageable in my life. It took me to where I thought there was no purpose for my life. Why should I even go through this anymore? And it could lead into another story.
Let me ask a couple questions about what you just shared
Sure.
before we go into another story. But so I love that you said checking on what I think, say, and do. And you didn't say checking in on how I am, or like who I am, because that's not. When we're talking, you're talking about like sort of making an inventory of the things that you'd like to change. And I just love the way that you worded that, because you didn't associate yourself with those things. You just said, these are things that happen that I'd like to shift. And so I just wanted to point that out, because for me, that is spiritual awakening, recognizing that I am not my thoughts, I am not my actions, I'm not even my behaviors. These are all just aspects of what's going on inside of me, and they can be amended through a practice. And let's see, you also said, well, hold on, I can never read my own handwriting. So yeah, you said, is this what I'm supposed to be doing, when we were talking about like your purpose? And when I hear you say that, it makes me feel like purpose can shift. Like you're checking in, like, is this still what's meaningful and purposeful to me? I think that's really a valuable sentence as well, because I think when I talk to people, when they think about purpose, it's so rigid. Like, oh my God, what am I here to do? It's got to just be like this one thing. But it's not, right? Like, tell me how does that feel for you? The shaping of purpose.
Well, I've loosened up a lot, as you mentioned. It doesn't serve me to think that I'm only here for one thing and one thing only. Uh, I remember, well, one of the qualities that I realized from early on is about my smile. And I don't necessarily would say, "Hey, that's such a great smile," but other people would say that, and my smile would help other people. And so uh, I remember from high school is when I really kind of embraced it. And there was a quote that said, "If you see a man without a smile, give him yours." And to me, there could be a day where my purpose is just to smile at somebody. It could be one person. I don't know which one it is, so I just smile at everybody. you know, but that smile for that one person is going to make all the difference in the world. And there may be a day where I get to maybe hold the door for somebody. Maybe I get to make a wrong number on a phone call and end up speaking to that person for like a few minutes or more, and knowing that in that moment my purpose was fulfilled, to be able to bring some light to somebody, to and maybe even if they didn't receive it in a moment, maybe I'll never get to know. However, that was my job, that was my purpose for that moment. And
I love that. I love it so much. Yeah, and I often say similar things. So I'm really giddy with that because yeah, it's not rigid. It can be something really that you might consider insignificant, but it might create a ripple in the universe that we have no idea what is happening. Okay, one more thing that you said, and then we'll go into the other story that you that came up for you. So how did like do you have any tools, or maybe could you share a little bit about how do you shift from being of service for validation to truly wanting to be of service? Is there anything sort of that you did to help heal that aspect? And then feel free to go into your story.
all right, thanks. Well, maybe for some people it comes easily, it comes quickly, and I'm sure it does. And for some of us, we have to do soul searching. We have to really look at our patterns. And even in the midst of a mess, even when we're not at our best, there are still patterns that emerge once we stop and be still and look at those. So we have to stop, just take a break from whatever it is that we're doing. And even if we think we're on a high horse and we're doing everything right and perfect, but they're still not feeling that soul fulfillment, like, I'm just generally happy. I'm just feeling joy. But we don't feel that. And we feel that something's missing. We just don't know how to label it. And so I would like to think that we can get to that place to find that truth within ourselves easily, um, comfortably, without any trauma, without anybody kicking our butt or pulling us and dragging us. However, most of the time, we need something that's going to shake us up, and I call it an shakening. That's my own word. You can't look it up. I haven't put it in the dictionary yet. It's called an shakening. We have what's called um, a spiritual two by four. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I like to start off with a spiritual feather. It's just like that still small voice, the voice of God, whatever you want to call him. He's like, okay, hey, Rodney, it's time to wake up. It's time to get on your path and do what you're here to do. And yeah, I'm not hearing that. All this noise going on in my head. I'm like, I want to do what I want to do. I'm watching TV. I'm being busy doing this. Maybe I was using drugs and alcohol and doing whatever else I was doing to kind of quiet all that noise and seeking things on the outside to keep me busy, and then that spirit, that divine presence said, we got to get his attention. Let's do the spiritual 2x4. And then it's like a whap, like, oh, what was that? Pay attention, Rodney. Now it's time. You want to start looking at why you're here. Stop wasting your time. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop wasting other people's time. And if we don't wake up at that point, that's when I say, well, here comes the spiritual Mack truck. That Mack, bong, bong, it's like, you got to move, get out of the way or get run over, or reach that stage of death, where whatever that person's belief of death is, that's what's coming next, and usually one of those is going to be enough to move us to stop, to be still, that we can hear with that voice that's been speaking all the time. It's, I mean, in different religions, they'll call it a still small voice, the voice of the divine. It just doesn't yell, It's just like, okay, well, now it's time for you to do this. Now it's time to take a look at yourself, take stock of yourself in a loving and gentle way, the pluses and the minuses. And now it's difficult for us to do that alone. It's difficult for us to do the self-help by ourselves. We need help to help ourselves. And whether we get it in a book or a group, people who are on the same path of wanting to find out, why they're really here. But first, we have to let go of the baggage. First, we have to clear off the stuff that gets in the way of looking at ourselves. And there are layers. I mean, I've had many layers of false beliefs and lies and traumas and things that just I was holding on to because that's all I knew, and that's what I thought made me go through each day. And then when I relax and let go, which is easier said than done, because to let go means, well, what else is there for me to hang on to? If I let go, it's like a free fall. If I free fall, I'm gonna fall and I'm gonna die, and so a lot of us don't want to let go of the familiar, even if it's causing us pain. However, when we have faith and trust that there is something that's going to buffer our fall, that if we fall or when we fall, it's not going to kill us. It's going to actually support us and make a foundation for us to move forward on. And even if we have to take a few steps back, at least we're on a foundation that we can trust. And like, okay, I don't know where I'm going. This is unfamiliar territory. However, it's a start. And if I'm still and quiet, and we can incorporate things called meditation and just be still and listen, even if it's all unfamiliar, at least it's better than where I came from, the pain of where I came from, the suffering that I knew, the indecision, all of that. I'd rather be uncomfortable in the newness and the nowness rather than be comfortable in the squalor and the pain and the suffering.
I love that. Wow. Yeah. Just, you said so many things that I'm just like back here, like, oh my God, a shakening. That's like incredible. What a wonderful play on words. And I often say that my own awakening process was like Source dumped a bucket of spiritual bricks on my head and was like, yo, it is time, do this. Or like a bucket of ice water, like it was really like, you must do this now. And there was this great sense of urgency behind it to really push me onto a different path very quickly. I've been on this path for 4.5 years, and it's just like continues just like on this uphill slope. And so I really loved everything, all of those tools that you shared about too, because I think that this is what people crave when we have these spiritual conversations. Some people are thinking, well, if I just had a spiritual experience, if I just had a near-death experience, then my life would like work out the way that I wanted. But I think that that's kind of why people who have spiritual experiences come back and share, because we've cultivated some information. It's not like you have a spiritual experience and then all of a sudden you're healed and well. it's just that you start to open up your awareness to the tools that you need to remove the blocks to love. And I heard you say so much of that. And thank you for sharing that, because yeah, there's work involved, but it actually is quite enjoyable once you get into it. It's a little uncomfortable at first, but then once you get over that little hump, it becomes really fun doing inner work. I think so anyway.
Yeah, I agree, Betty. I think it's kind of like gardening. In the beginning, it's work. It's really hard, sweaty work. You're in the dirt. You're getting dirty. It might be even muddy, and there's no apparent reward. It's just a mess. There's days and weeks, and there are outside influences, and like if it's a garden, it's the rain and the storm and animals and insects and all this other stuff going on that are don't just want to forget about it. Just let me go to the supermarket, get what I want. But if you you want to, if you're on a farm and this is what you need to survive, this is your sustenance, and it's like I have to grow this. It's like from within. It's like there's nothing coming from the outside. If I don't do this, I'm gonna starve. And our spirit, I was not our spirit, our soul often is starving for loving, positive attention that only we can give ourselves. And I say, once we open up to the divine, we get it, we see it in everything. We see how the divine's touch is in everything, and most certainly us. And we get rid of that, maybe the topsoil is not doing anything for us, and we got to go get that rich soil underneath, and we have to dig into ourselves, and it is work. And sometimes there's roots of things that don't belong, and those roots are in there hard, and we've got to dig them out, and sometimes it hurts. It hurts. However, like you said, it gets to be, we get to find a joy in it. We get to get that sense of accomplishment, even if the fruits haven't appeared yet. Even if I mean, I'm doing all this work and I still don't know who I am. I still don't know why I'm here, but at least I know who I'm not. At least I know that I'm no longer there and doing those things that were that are causing me to feel this great hunger. And that's the thing. That great hunger is what moves us. Uh, while you were mentioning uh, about the near-death experience, it reminds me of people who want to do bungee jumping and jump out of a plane with a parachute. You know, those are simulating near-death experiences. And so I think there's something inside that says, I mean, I don't think most people do those things and ask before, what do I expect to get out of this? We don't. I just want to do it. And not realize that there is something within that is requesting this to happen. You know, some inducing or traumatic experience. It's going to release a lot of stuff. It's going to release emotions and feelings. It's going to release stuff that's trapped in our cell, on our cellular level that we didn't never probably didn't even know was trapped in there until we do it. And that adrenaline and all that other stuff, endorphins, all that stuff is those natural drugs are operating in our system and unlocking a lot of things that would not normally become revealed to us unless we put ourselves in those situations. And even like the slow death of using substances. If people make it through that, they get to have opportunities for a revelation, for that spiritual awakening, for the shakening. That's like, hey, come on, get out of there. There's something even greater for you. And so
Yeah, I love that. And thanks for mentioning about like how our bodies and our cells kind of store that trauma, and there needs to be a release from that. That was like one of the coolest things that I learned on the spiritual integration journey, was like about somatic release, that I have to be purposeful in making sure that I'm releasing these things from my cellular body. My soul might feel completely reborn and awoken and perfect and whole and divine and a little self-righteous. But my physical body has been through like the ringer, and this stuff needs to come out of my physical body. So thanks for mentioning that, because that really has been a great spiritual tool for me. I've really loved chatting with you. I'm glad that we got to do it again. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you want to share to feel more complete about our time together.
Well, again, I want to thank you for that, because even in the conversation, stuff is flooding up to the surface, and I've had. I was speaking with a friend earlier today, and she said, "Oh, well, you never mentioned any near-death experiences in all the time that I've known you, and this stuff doesn't just come up in conversation. Oh, by the way, I just never told you, but I had a near-death. We don't have those conversations with people normally. So I really appreciate this, and I think the more that we do, we can see the positive aspects of talking about these things, um, and giving them relevance, because it's not just necessarily a real near-death experience, like almost being decapacitated by a truck, or a time, I don't know if I told you about almost falling off of the Grand Canyon, for me to get a realization of something going on that needs attention. Uh, and if we don't bring these up, it doesn't have to be that. It can be an idea that we were close to death, what we call death. Um, just a fear of something, and it feels like death. Like if I had gone further, or it had progressed, then I would die. You know, and I think that sometimes that in and of itself is a message to us without having really been close to death, but it felt like it. The thought of it, even years later, still brings the same feeling. Well, there's still something for us to look at. It's pointing us to look at how I can get that out the way, so I can be more fully self-expressed in a positive way. And so, yes, we don't have to go bungee jumping. We don't have to jump out of a plane with a parachute, uh, or put ourselves in these situations. However, I said, you know what? You probably have gone through uh, a near-death experience and not realized it, because we don't want to look at it that way. We just want to bury it and move on, and we miss the opportunity to see what it may have been teaching us or educating us about. And there's a difference between teaching and being taught and being educated. So,
Yeah.
and real quickly, education means to draw out from within. Educare, the Latin root, to draw out from within, meaning everything we need to know is already inside of us. So our situations that we go through in life are educating us to the true nature of who we are, and the clues are there. We just have to be still and be silent and focus and trust that it is going to be revealed in ways that we can understand it, and it won't necessarily happen right away. Most of the time, not. Um, but it puts us on a path.
That's beautiful. I'm so happy to be part of your coma dream, or I'm happy that you're part of mine. Either way, I really am so grateful for this conversation today. It's so beautiful to connect in conscious conversation. And like like you just said, the more that we share about our mystical or paranormal experiences, the more that they become the normal. And I think that that's the shift that we're here to experience as spirits. I really feel like this mass awakening happening, and the more that we talk about this stuff, the more courage we give other people to talk about theirs. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. And all of your links will be in the liner notes of this episode so that people can contact you. And I just want to thank you again for serving our community.
Thank you. Bless you and bless each and every one. And may you find your heart's desire. May you find your true purpose. And may it be in a way that brings you to see the joy in life, and to not fear death, and not to fear talking about death. So thank you and bless you all.
Thanks so much. Be wavy. We'll see you next time.